Boys and girls, authors of poems do different things to make their writing fun to read and listen to. So today we're going to discuss the elements of poetry. And by knowing these elements, it can help us, the reader, understand a poem's main message. So let's look at these different elements of poetry. First, poets use words to create a rhythm or beat that gives a poem a musical feeling. And so when we read it, we kind of have a rhythm to that poem. Now, words can also rhyme in a poem. Not all poets use rhyme, but some do. So when words rhyme, the words end with the same sound or sounds. Here's an example. Let's look at that. We have the words rain, train, and crane. Can you think of any words that rhyme with the words rain, train, and crane? I'll give you a few seconds to think of some rhyming words. Did you think of any? I thought of the word brain and maybe the word mane. Brain and mane rhyme with rain, train, and crane. Now, poets create a pattern when they repeat words, sounds, or beats. And instead of using paragraphs, poets arrange lines of text in groups called stanzas. Poets may also use special type or font or extra spaces between words to create a pattern. And boys and girls, a visual pattern. This is what this is called right here, visual pattern. And a poem can have a pattern to make it look nice or easier to read. And let's remember, a stanza is like a paragraph in a poem. In a poem, they don't call them paragraphs, they call them stanzas. And the poet can use special type or font. And they can use extra spaces, or they can write their words in new and interesting ways to make a visual pattern in the poem. And that just adds to the feeling or mood of the poem. Now, poets also use descriptive language, and that's how things look, sound, feel, smell, and taste. And this helps you paint kind of a picture, the poet paint a picture in your mind. And so that's what poetry does. It paints a picture in your mind. And all those things, the describing words, they'll describe how something looks, how something sounds, how something feels, how something smells, and something tastes. Those are describing words. Remember, those are adjectives. So a poet is going to use a lot of different adjectives in their poem. The other thing a poet does is they use figurative language. Now, we've studied some types of figurative language, and those are words that don't mean exactly what they say. So the word says one thing, but it really means something else. And some examples of figurative language are similes. And a simile, an example of that might be, she is an angel. So if the poet says that, then what are they saying? That's right, they're saying that somebody is really good. Or an idiom. So if a poet said that so-and-so is second to none, then that would be them saying that they're the best. And an example of a hyperbole would be an exaggeration. So if they said that this is the worst day of my life, then that would mean just that they had a really bad day. So that would be an example of a hyperbole, and we use them all the time, and so do you. So those are some examples of figurative language, and poets use those all the time, boys and girls. So what we're going to do next is we are going to be reading some poems about weather, and those are whatever the weather poems. And I know you're really going to enjoy them. And what we're going to want to do while we're reading those poems is we're going to be looking for those elements of of poetry. So we're going to be looking here for rhythm. We're going to be looking for some rhyme. We're going to be looking for those describing words, which are adjectives, some visual patterns, and some figurative language. Let's see if we can find those elements of poetry in our Whatever the Weather poems.